Okay, hello everyone. This is the first video of Chapter 3 lecture about leisure, health, and I'm adding well-being here because the chapter really talks about well-being. And that's what we're talking about in this course, happiness as well. So a little bit of an overview of this Chapter 3 and what you want to be able to do at the end of this Chapter 3. First of all, we'll keep learning different benefits of leisure to our health, happiness, and well-being. And specifically, we will look at the different aspects of well-being: physical, social, intellectual, and emotional. So you need to be able to identify benefits of leisure specifically to each of those 4 dimensions, okay? The other things that you need to do is that I will challenge you, I will encourage you to critically think of leisure's roles in our negative states, such as illness, ill-being, and unhappiness as well. And why would that be? Because I think it's very important that, first of all, it's a fact, right? Some of the leisure is related to illness, ill-being, unhappiness. That's true. Probably you know that based on your experience. When you did some leisure, maybe a little too much, then you are not feeling well. Your body is not feeling well, for example. Your emotion is not really well. That's there. It's a fact. And more importantly, if we can understand that relationship between leisure and the negative state, we can manage that better. So we can flip that potentially, and we can mitigate, we can reduce the negative impacts of leisure, which is also indirectly help our pursuit of happiness, which is the major topic in this course too. So in this chapter, chapter 2, we're talking about just the benefits. In this chapter, we're talking about very specific aspects of well-being: physical, social, intellectual, emotional well-being, and how leisure impact that. And also, I want you to think both critically too, as in think about negative aspect as well. Right? Good. So before getting into those 4 dimensions of well-being, the chapter really talk about this building block concept. Those are the concepts, those are the tools that we're going to take and analyze each aspect of well-being and how leisure impact that. So let's get it done. Let's understand that first. First, according to the textbook, they define well-being, and that's a sense of individual vitality, like you have energy, right? You wake up and you're ready to do something, and that's vitality. Well-being is also the ability to do something meaningful, engaging, which in turn makes you feel competent, as in you can achieve the goal that you want. And autonomous, and these are the things that we already discussed. Autonomous means self-endorsing behavior. And finally, well-being is also having enough resources to be resilient in negative, adverse circumstances. For example, when you're facing stress, do you have a skill set to cope with the stress, right? And actually, as you can imagine, leisure is one of the coping resources in this situation. So all of these things are very important aspect actually, and it's very broad definition, which I like too. But also, if you actually take a look at scientific literature about well-being, now well-being is called subjective well-being, in contrast to the objective well-being, such as physical indicators. And now that's defined, that has 2 subdimensions, according to researchers such as Ed Diener from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. One aspect of it is called cognitive evaluation. Cognitive as in thinking. You think about your life, right? And here's your expectation, where life you want to be. And this is a situation, your evaluation of where your life is. If it's close to the expectation or even exceed it, you're basically, your well-being is high, right? That's a cognitive evaluation. And there are 2 bit of sub-themes in it though. One is cognitive evaluation of your overall life, like life as a whole. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about it? Are you satisfied or not so much? The other aspect is this specific aspect of life. So we often ask people to think about, in addition to overall life, what about your leisure life? What about your job life, work life? What about your maybe family? What about your spirituality? We ask those specific aspects of life as well. Okay, so that's a cognitive evaluation. The other aspect is what is called affective or emotional balance, basically. What it is basically having more positive emotion and less negative emotion. That's the kind of balance that you want to get. And if you're more curious about it, some research has suggested that it's not like totally positive emotion and zero negative emotion. That's not the best balance, actually. That's not the best ratio. Some research has suggested that about a 3-to-1, 3 positive, 1 negative, is actually a good kind of balance. Because if you actually think about it, that makes sense though. Negative emotion isn't necessary if you're doing something challenging, for example, right? And in challenging experiences are necessary in our life if you want to grow as a person. So, it's not that, we should have a totally zero negative emotion. There's a good balance, but definitely more positive emotion. Another building block concept that chapter talk about is health. And it gets a little tricky. It's defined in your textbook by using WHO, World Health Organization's definition. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And that underlying part is a little tricky because sometimes we tend to think about health as whether you have a disease or not, or illness or not, or injury or not, or impairment or not, right? And if you don't have any of those, at least major thing, you're healthy, right? But that's not what we're saying here. This is more of, traditional medicine tends to think that way, that, okay, health is absence of all those things, negative thing like a disease. But more, I would say, holistic, comprehensive, and a lot of what is called allied health field, such as physiotherapy, occupational therapy, recreation therapy, even nursing. Many of the nursing people, as well as some of the medical field, started to look at the health as it's more than that. And I think it makes sense if you think about it. Say, for example, I love playing badminton, right? And to me, it's not enough for not having, say, knee injury and cannot play, cannot walk around, and that totally not healthy for me. But let's say I can fix those injury, but I cannot really still play the badminton. And that state is not quite, at least to me, is not really desirable. It's not really healthy. It's not good enough for me. Maybe medical doctor will stop saying, hey, Shin, my business with you done. Because your injury, your knee is okay. You can function. You can walk around. But to me, it's still not there. Maybe I would go to physiotherapy to get it really back to the level so that I can play badminton. So that's how we think about health. It's more of a wellness perspective, that it's not just a void of negativity, but it's really pursuit of positivity and functionality. And here in this definition says complete. That's very controversial, because does that mean that the people with, for example, disabilities cannot be healthy? Personally, I don't think so. There are different states of health depending on individuals and the situation as well. So it's it's actually a difficult concept to define. Another building block concept that chapter talk about is lifespan. And that is about changes and continuities of life from birth to death. I know it's sad, but we all die. That's there. Now, lifespan perspective is to look at the individual, not a snapshot. Like, right now, for example, I am right now, what, 32, 33, something like that. Yeah, I forgot. Anyway, but not you looking at me as at this age, right? But I'm a human being grew from the past. So looking at that from childhood to the adolescent to young adult to me now, and from here on, right? So looking at the trajectory, basically, over time, and that's the perspective. There are many types of perspectives in this, broad lifespan perspective. One of them is, for example, Erik Erikson. He was a famous developmental psychologist, and his perspective. And he identified different stages of psychosocial development that people go through typically. And he identified each year, basically year range and the stage and the task. Like these are the tasks, these are the things you have to achieve psychosocially, psychologically, and socially. You have to achieve. For example, preschooler, this purple people, or even blue grade schooler, they have to, for example, preschooler have to get the initiative, sense of initiative, like you're the in charge of yourself, your behavior. Grade schoolers, you have to do this industry. You kind of contribute to the outside world sort of thing. You don't have to know this model specifically, but you have to be able to take this lifespan perspective, and you have to know what that is. And finally, final building block concept that chapter talk about is quote unquote core plus balance model. Now this is one of the few instances textbook does not get it right, okay? And I know that this is a very famous concept and model in our field. So it's not correct. So forget about what you read in the chapter. And I'm going to tell you the real core and balance model. Okay, that's the real name. It's developed by Ramon Zabriskie, I think, University of, where is he? Utah or BYU, basically, I think, maybe. Anyway. So this model, first of all, is about family leisure. Okay, it's specifically about family leisure. So leisure done by a family member. Oftentimes, it's a nuclear family in Canada and the US, but it can apply to extended family. According to this model, there are two types of family leisure. One is core, right? And a core leisure, and this part, is pretty much same as textbook. Home-based, ordinary, accessible, and regular. And it promotes closeness among family members. What kind of family leisure did you do? Did your family do when you were maybe a kid? Something that's around the home. Very ordinary to you, to your family. It's very accessible, it's maybe cheap, and it's regular. It's often. Maybe you had a tradition of doing barbecue in your backyard. Or maybe you had a board game night or something. Those kind of things are the one that we're talking about here as a core leisure activity. It promotes closeness of the family members. And now the other type is called a balanced leisure activities, which is less regular. So it's infrequent, basically, novel, it's new, and it's a unique experience. What did you do? What kind of balanced leisure activity did your family do? Maybe your family took a trip once a year, maybe, or once a couple years. It's novel, right? You don't really often go to the same destination every year. It's unique, and it's less regular. It does provide a challenge and growth with the family if you think about it. Those vacation trip kind of thing. Planning, it's a lot of work. There may be some stressful situation or troubles as you go, like when you take a flight, you forgot something, and that makes a problem, right? And you have to kind of address with that. And your parents got a little frustrated and stressed out maybe. So, but by going through that together as a family, you can grow as a family. Now, research shows that each of those core and balanced leisure activity, as well as having especially both, relates to family satisfaction and family functioning. So it's a good thing you're family. The key here is that some of the nuances about core and what core and balanced leisure means, but also it's a family leisure activity, okay? It's not just individual thing, it's a family leisure activity. So if I ever ask you to give me example and you don't give me a family leisure activity type of example, no, that's not it. So this is the end of the first video. And in the second video, we'll get to the fourth aspect of well-being.